A game of Advanced Civilization is played in rounds. Each round consists of 13 phases, which at points can be performed simultaneously by all players. Some phases or situations may require players to perform actions in specific order, which will be addressed during each phase breakdown. The first phase is Collect Taxes. This is performed in Archaeological Succession Track Order, AST for short. During this phase, each player transfers 2 tokens from their stock into their treasury for each of their cities in play. If a player does not have enough tokens to transfer to their treasury, they will transfer as much as they can per city, and a revolt will be initiated at the end of this phase. During a revolt, the player with the most units in their stock, with tokens counting as 1 unit and cities counting as 5, will become the beneficiary for the revolt. The beneficiary will then replace the revolted cities with their own cities, their choice. In case the beneficiary does not have enough cities to replace the revolted cities, the player with the second most units on the stock will replace revolted cities with as many of their cities as they can, and so on until all the revolted cities have been replaced. Phase 2 is Population Expansion. Each player adds 1 token to any location on the board they control 1 token. Then 2 tokens for each location on the board in which they control 2 or more tokens. If needed, this phase can be performed in AST order. Phase 3 is Census. Players count the amount of tokens on the board. Cities and ships are not considered tokens, and adjust their marker in the census track accordingly. Ties are broken in AST order. Phase 4 is Ship Construction and Maintenance. In census order, players can build and maintain ships. A ship costs 2 tokens to build. These tokens can come from the treasury or a single shore location on the board. If the ship is paid fully via the treasury, the ship can be placed on any shore the player has a token on. If at least 1 token from the board is used, then the ship must be placed on the shore from which the token was taken. All used tokens are put into the stock. Ships constructed from previous rounds must be maintained by paying 1 token from the treasury or from the area which the ship occupies. It is not mandatory to pay for maintenance. If a player refuses to pay for maintenance, the ship is returned to the player's stock. The removed ship can then be rebuilt during the same phase or any future ship construction phase. Phase 5 is Movement. In this phase, players can move their tokens and ships. Players move in census order. Tokens can move across 1 land boundary or embark a ship in the same area, but not both. There is no limit to the amount of tokens and players that can move into one area. Ships can only move along the shore and can move up to 4 spaces. A ship can hold up to 5 tokens, and each token that embarks a boat must debark on the same turn, but multiple tokens can embark and debark a ship during its movement. Phase 6 is Conflict. Conflict occurs when 2 or more nations occupy the same area with a token and or a city. Conflict between tokens is resolved in the following way. Starting with the nation with the fewest tokens to remove 1 of their tokens, and then the player with the next fewest removes theirs, and so on. If the players have the same amount of tokens, then they remove tokens simultaneously. This is done until only 1 nation is left in the area. Cities automatically win in conflicts against 6 or less tokens. If the attacker has at least 7 tokens, then the city is replaced with 6 of the city owner's tokens, and conflict is resolved as usual. Token conflict always occurs before conflict is resolved with a city. If a city is eliminated, the attacker will receive a random trade card from the victim's hand and can move up to 3 tokens from their stock into the treasury. Phase 7 is City Construction. A player with 6 or more tokens in an area containing a city site, marked with a square on the board, may replace all of their tokens in that area with a city from their stock. The tokens used are returned to the player's stock. Areas without a city site require at least 12 tokens. Phase 8 is Removal of Surplus Population. All surplus tokens that exceed the maximum population limit of the area labeled with an encircled number are returned to the player's stock. Similarly, tokens sharing an area with a city are always returned to the stock. Players then check for city support. A player must have 2 tokens on the board per city they own. Players with not enough tokens must reduce their cities until they can fully support all their cities. To reduce a city, the player picks 1 city of their choice and converts it into tokens equal to the maximum population limit of that area. These new tokens count towards city support. Phase 9 is Acquisition of Trade Cards. The player with the fewest cities on the map draws from the trade card stack first. A player draws 1 card at a time from each stack, starting with 1 and continuing in numerical order for each city in play. Thus, a player having 4 cities will draw the top cards of the first, second, third, and fourth stack. The player is then allowed to purchase trade cards from the 9th stack at the cost of 18 tokens from the treasury per card. The player with the next fewest cities continues, and so on. Trade cards are always kept secret and are the only part of the game that is not public knowledge. Phase 10 is Trade. Trade is open to all players and is performed simultaneously with no order. A player can only trade civilization and treasury cards. And a trade can only involve 2 players. Each trade must involve at least 3 trade cards from each side. Trade cards are kept secret until traded. The players trading must give correct information of at least 2 of the trade cards being traded. The only trade cards not allowed to be traded are non-tradable calamity cards. It is recommended that the trading phase is limited to no more than 5 minutes. Players should attempt to obtain commodity trade cards of the same type. The type is listed on the card under the stack number. The numbers on the top and bottom of the cards show the value of the sets of commodity cards, depending on how many the player has in their possession. Thus, having 3 hides yields a value of 9. Phase 11 is resolution of calamities. Calamities are resolved in ascending order, starting with volcanic eruption. The player holding the calamity is the primary victim, and in case a secondary victim is needed, the primary victim selects the other player who will be affected, with the rule that the player that traded the primary victim the calamity card cannot be selected as a secondary victim. The player cannot be the primary victim of more than 2 calamities in the same turn. In case a player holds more than 2 calamity cards, 2 are selected at random to keep and the other calamities are discarded. Once all calamities have been resolved, players will again check for city support. Phase 12 is acquisition of civilization cards. Players can now buy any number of civilization cards using their treasury, commodity cards, and credits from previously purchased civilization cards in ASD order. The cost of the civilization card is shown at the bottom center of the card. Tokens used are sent to the stock. Commodity card values are calculated as explained in Phase 10, Trade. The used commodity cards are discarded. Most civilization cards provide credit towards cards of the same group. The credit value is shown on the bottom next to the cost of the card. This credit must be applied first when purchasing a card of the specified group. The credit of each civilization card applies to each new purchase of a card of the specified group. Civilization cards with 2 groups get the credit from both groups they belong to. A player cannot acquire a card they already own. Once players finish purchasing civilization cards, players discard trade cards down to 8. All discarded trade cards this turn, with the exception of non-tradable calamities, are shuffled together and placed at the bottom of their corresponding stacks. The non-tradable calamity cards are then placed at the bottom of their corresponding stacks. The last phase, Phase 13, is movement of markers on the ASD track. Each player moves their marker 1 spot to the right. If entering a new epoch, the player must meet the requirements listed in the epoch heading. Unless a player is in the Stone Age, if a player has no cities, their marker moves 1 space to the left instead. The game ends when 1 player reaches the finish square on the ASD track or a predetermined time limit is reached. The winner is the player with the most points. Points are obtained from face value of civilization cards, set values of commodity cards in hand, tokens in the treasury, ASD position per value listed in the track, and 50 points per city on the board.